So I started to, you can see this here. I started to,
Are you branching out?
yeah, using a purple felt tip pen.
Ooh.
I've been sketching a lot with it, with the
What do you,
old
what
purple.
do you what does it feel like to sketch with a purple pen?
You know, I've been taking notes with it. I've been drawing with it, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah. I I had a little color, a little spice.
Exactly. I was you're just sketching away and things and stuff, and
Look
just
at you. What
like
scale is
little.
that? What scale is that drawing?
Uh, Actually, because I was doing it on my grid paper, I mean, I did draw it to a scale. I just haven't applied that scale yet.
You just haven't
If
figured
that
out what
makes
it is to scale,
it
but
is
it
to a
is.
scale.
You
Yes,
just don't know what scale.
I don't know what scale it is yet.
I was just talking about this with somebody, and it was like the magic of sketching. From a
Oh yeah,
non-architect watching an architect, I think it's a kind
yeah,
of a superpower, right? And and to be able to, like, the person I was talking to said, because I was like, it doesn't even matter what scale. Like, you sketch with a thick
yeah,
pen because you don't know where things
yeah.
go yet, right? And so, like, I like a sign pen. I like a really, yeah, here's one
Oh
right here,
yeah,
right on the
yeah.
desk. It still has the label on it from when it was in the store, even. But
In
these
this,
Pentel sign pens are great because, like it could be literally the thickness of a wall or a panel.
yeah,
Look at
yeah.
matching sign pens. Um,
Love the sign
it,
pen.
the further you go along, you might graduate to a thinner pen or whatever. But because it's about concepts and it's about ideas and about all those things, got a few pens on your desk there.
I've got just a few.
Yeah,
What
you do
size and
have
scale
this
would
addiction.
you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
But
just the
like
ones that I cleaned up off of my
this
desk
is
to
the
get
this
them
is
from
the
rolling.
like whittled down. These are just the ones you use, right?
These are just the ones that I have in hand or like cleaned out of my
Oh
bag or
man, I'm
something
looking
like
I'm looking
that.
over at my pen holder. I gotta grab it now.
Yeah, you have to.
So mine's got a mixed. I have a rhombus shape. I don't know what is this?
Oh,
It's like two
nice.
triangles back to back, and I got all kinds of stuff. Oh, here you go. I got a little Lego Mandalorian on mine. I don't know if you have one of these, but
I
a little
I don't
Lego
have a Lego
Mandalorian. No, that's
Mandalorian. I
I
have
shouldn't
a
say
Lego
Mandalorian.
Darth.
This is
That's
this is
Boba
Boba
Fett.
Fett.
That's the. It's not like some rando. It's me. It's not no rando mando.
I'm jiggling it here for the audio listeners. Oh, and I have a this is a great tool right here. The Olfa branded knife box
Oh yeah,
cutter
yeah.
with the snap off
Did I
blades.
show you this one?
That's a great tool right
It's
there.
a mechanical pencil that is a wooden pencil.
Nice. I've got some what are these called? China marker. Here we go.
Okay.
A
Pull
Faber
out a
Castell brown pencil. I have no idea why that's in here, but it's not something that I can get rid of, clearly. Anyway,
That's a quick finding your thing here. A lead holder.
yeah, those aren't in this. They're not in this
Okay, then
thing.
I won't.
Trying to think of where they are, actually, now that you say that. I think they're upstairs. Oh, you got the thin. That's a Statler, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. We have a couple of those around, but I like the big boys. I like the big
Oh
ones
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
What is
was
this? Oh,
I
this is
was
a laser
watching
pointer. I thought that might be a lead holder, but it's not.
I was watching a documentary about Louis Kahn. Of course, I was right.
Oh, this is right. Yeah, you're doing a deep dive
Yeah.
into the masters here.
Yes.
You seem to be, from my perspective, casual listening of different content out there that exists to me is a deep dive into the masters. What do you got there?
I have The Art Museums of Louis Icahn.
That's a book dedicated just to the museums, so it has
Yep.
to have lots of drawings in it.
Oh yeah, it's just chock full of drawings, of hand drawings, preliminary sketches, models. Here's a hand sketch of the Kimball. I mean, yeah, it just shows the good old days of 2D communication via the pencil. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this back to this conversation I was having is the person was talking about just how really seasoned architects can just sketch to scale, right? Like
Yeah.
and it's funny because you don't even need to really usually sketch to scale, right? It's
Yeah.
like you could be sketching in perspective, you could just be sketching ideas, diagrams. It's about relationships. It's not about the detailist stuff. And then there are like you, I'm sure you can do this. Like I actually have a pile of sketches around here somewhere where it was like a week's worth of just sketching details for a project, and they were pretty close to being at 1/2 inch scale, I think is what I was kind of drawing at. And I wasn't really trying to, but it just kind of worked. Once you draw something that you can relate everything else to, because it was like a wood frame construction building, right? Here's a 2x4 bottom plate or a 2x6 bottom plate, and now everything you just draw it in relation to that, and it kind of makes sense for the people you're handing it to make something more specific out of.
I was on site one time, and I was standing next to the site superintendent. It was an executive conference room for a university that we were working on. And we were looking at the windows. We had some clear story in this conference room. And it didn't turn out the way we were hoping the details were. And they were just like, hey, can you come up with a sketch for something that trims these out? It was a hollow metal frame that was a custom hollow metal frame, but it didn't turn out the way we were all hoping it was going to. So the rest of the conference room was wood paneling and wood trim and everything else. The reason we didn't do the wood trim and everything over it is because these were acoustic windows. It was kind of chunky, and we didn't really. The frame that we made was really a thin profile frame, and we were trying to.
Can I pause here?
Sure.
What's an acoustic window? Never heard of what an acoustic window. What is that?
You've never heard?
You mean like a triple pane, like it's keeping sound out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Think about. Well, I mean, you thinking about like all of the guitars and stuff on your background. So like a recording studio or something like that. The window, gotcha. Those kind of windows.
You're cutting down on the sound transmission with them. Okay.
Cutting down on the sound
I've never heard of it referred to as an acoustic window, so I learned something new here.
Okay. So he was just like, can you come up with something? We got to do something. This just doesn't look right. And so I pulled out a pencil in my pocket and started drawing on the wall. And I was just like, well, I think we could do
upside
this
down and
this
backwards too, right? Because you do that.
I do that too, yes. But this particular one was just, we were standing there and I was drawing it on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, oh, that looks really good. And then he's just like, wait a minute. And he pulls out his tape measure and he starts taping. He's like, did you just draw this 1-to-1? I'm like, yeah. and so I was just like, and so we started like drawing dimensions. He was dimensioning it, and he was like, and ultimately we just took a picture of that because we added dimensions to it. And he was just like, can I go ahead and just use this as our sketch? I'm like, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's just make sure your picture
Cormac,
is to
you're
scale.
liable.
Yeah. I didn't sign it. It turned out, it turned out nice. The finished product turned out really nice, but it was just wild that, it was just like, hey, let me do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done the whole drawing upside down. I was drawing with another client and we were talking about just a temporary condition. And I started drawing and I was like trying to interpret what we were all talking about. And I was drawing it. Mm-hmm. Put the piece of paper down and I was drawing it. And he was just like, yeah, I think that's what we want to do. And then he was just like, but did you just draw that upside down? I was like, well, I was drawing it so that you could see it. I already see it.
It's
I see
already
it up
here.
here. Like I wanted you to see it, and so I'm like drawing upside down. And he's just like, he's like, he's worked in like he was actually the office manager for a really big name firm or big name architects, husband and wife team, to be quite honest with you. I don't know. They may or may not.
How's that work?
Oh, these were, you know them.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Well, you know.
And my wife does have an architectural training.
Yeah, that's true too. It's interesting. I've for the longest time, I always met the architect and school teacher pairing.
Yeah, like
And
you
I've
guys.
been
Yeah.
meeting more and more architect pairing. Like, good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
if they've made it work, that's great.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Actually, last night I stopped by the students that I taught last semester, and they were working on their project. And I was stopped by, and they were asking me some advice and stuff. And so I was drawing, and I started drawing what I saw on their screen to talk through something with them. And I kind of just kept adjusting it to kind of like more or less get it to the scale, like the actual scale, so that what I was sketching and describing actually like was workable. I don't know if they were like, wow, look, he can sketch and it makes sense, or if they were even, I mean, they were paying attention, but I mean, I don't know if they cared or not, but it was just kind of interesting that I kind of reminded myself, because like working remotely and having these like communications by sketching, are few and far between now.
Right.
And so, I kind of just somewhat amazed myself that I can still sketch as well as I
Because it
used
does
to be able
take
to sketch.
practice, right? I mean, it does
yeah,
take
yeah.
you. You may not lose it completely, but you definitely lose
you get out
the
of practice.
feel. Like and it's, but the interesting thing is that, and I'm curious, teaching students and stuff who probably don't do that hardly as much as we used to.
Right.
There's this idea that I put to sketching, which is kind of like working at the speed of thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Much more so than what you can do on a computer. And maybe it's not fair for everybody, right? Like that's a generalization, but because the computer forces you, depending on the program you're in, to think about more things earlier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is this?
Right.
And things like snaps and orthos and all of those kinds of constraints, like legitimately great constraints when you need them, right? But but when you don't, but then the programs force you to do stuff like that, and it's like, okay, now I got to. You just get into a different mindset where it's like, okay, now I'm going to actually try to draw this to scale. When it's like, maybe this isn't the time for that, and therefore you have to do it more slowly. Right, because you can't just describe it. Like, this isn't AI LLM style Chat GPT. Draw me a detail. Like when you literally are just sketching so fast, so fast that when you draw a box, it's not a box, right? You're drawing a section of 2x4 blocking in a wall with an X in the middle, and it just looks like a blob with an X, and everybody around, maybe it's just you, maybe it's a couple other people, know what that is, right?
So can I show you
that's
something? That's
drawing at the speed of thought. That's communicating. It's ideating at the speed of thought to me, and that is very different than what a lot of these digital tools force you to do.
So for the listeners, I'm going to be sharing my screen, so maybe we'll drop this in there. It is, student.
Get on YouTube, people.
Yeah. I was going to say, get on YouTube and take a look at this. But I mean, I think you're going to look at this in something very similarly to like the conversation. It's like this was a diagram
on layers
upon layers.
Yeah,
exactly. And it was just this conversation that, oh yeah. Oh, what if we do that? Oh, and it was just like this conversation about like, the different things that you can do to like what if you shifted it this way? And what if you did that? And what if you reinforced this kind of like angular pathway and all of these other things? And it was just this kind of fun conversation about layering upon layering upon layering. And I think about all these different architects that we grew up learning about. And including even in the book, the sketches that Louis Kahn was doing is just these layers upon layers and just the thinking and the fluid, the thinking at the speed of light and using the sketching tool as a way to just kind of like think through that. And you're like, oh, we could do this. And oh, we could do that. And it's the only thing that kind of like I guess somewhat saddens me or about the way the iterations have evolved. It is, especially when you're relying more on like, them trying to do things to scale and trying to do things. Oh, this would legitimately be what the wall would do. It's like, at this point, that's not the exercise. The exercise is to think about, the fluidity of the space and the interconnectedness and all of these other things. And yes, you can evolve all of that from this sketch, but the sketch itself is like the pureness of the thought, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that iterative kind of scribble of overlay on top of overlay and like you go around the shape with the fat pen 3 or 4 times because you're just trying to get it a little bit closer to what you were thinking. And that's okay. That the other 3 circles that you did underneath the 4th one are still there. You don't have to clean it up. There's no eraser. There's no delete. There's no undo, right? Undo is pull out another sheet, put it on top, do it again. That's the newest version of the current process. And then you move it over a few inches and you do another thing. And it's like, okay, this room's going to get bigger. Slide it over, draw it a little bigger, right? Yeah. And there's just something like, that idea of that fluidity, that flow is there. And of course, that can all be accomplished digitally as well, but it's totally different.
Yeah.
And it can't have, like, you got to have the device, you got to be able to communicate, you got to throw it up on a projector, or you got to share that screen, and all of a sudden there's a hiccup and a road bump and a hurdle to get it there so somebody else can see it. And like that stuff all kind of sucks still, right? Like we're just not there yet digitally with where we were back then.
I mean, we
sound old.
I will say the good thing. Yeah, true. I will say the good thing about like, so when I started the sketch that I just threw up there, the student couldn't meet when I was on campus, so we just did a Zoom call. And we're talking. They're just like, I don't know if we're going to really get anything out of having a Zoom call or a crit on Zoom. And I'm like, we'll make it work.
You're like, I do this every day.
I do this every day. Hold my beer. But it was more of just like, we'll make this work. And so like that sketching and stuff and like being able to like, I will say that, yes, we were just holding up all of our like pencils and pens and all this other stuff, but this is equally a valuable tool. The good old stylus.
Huh? Is that what that is?
And and then here, just sit there and sketch.
I've got the Apple Pencil here from my iPad.
Well, you have, although I'm not sure if you're using it, but the same computer I have.
That's right. You reminded me. I don't use this thing very often, but yes, I have the black one that goes with the Microsoft computer.
Okay, yeah, mine's
the white one for the Apple, the dark side for Windows.
Mine's red.
That's nice. You can actually see it and find it when you're
exactly. Well, no, because this, with all of the red pens and all of this other stuff in the cup,
blends in.
And this thing was sitting in here, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like searching around for it. I'm like, where is it? Where is it? And I'm like, I don't see it. And it sure enough, it was right there. And then I pulled out another pen in it because it's got the little magnet in there. It was like magnetized to a couple of other pens. So when I pulled it out, I had like 3 pens that came.
Careful, you leave it in there too long, it won't have that magnet anymore, probably.
Well, it was. I didn't even realize it was in there. Normally, I just set it on the actual computer itself. Just do that.
So I have a question for you. Speaking of how things have changed, you sent me a text the other day. I'm pulling it up here, and it says something that alludes to you lamenting the current state of architecture here.
Yeah.
says, what's a bit depressing with the profession today is, why don't you go ahead and finish that sentence?
Wait, do I have to? Now I'm going to have to go
You don't
and
have
read
to look
it.
it up. I can finish
don't-
it for you if you.
Yeah,
You
finish
don't,
it
you
for
don't
me.
have to look it up. Okay, so it says we don't really do much more than box checking.
Mm, yeah.
What brought that on? Because I have some thoughts about this. Like what is the typical day to day of an architect working on a project? Is it just CYA and box checking and moving paper and meetings?
So, yeah. Well, so I had a conversation with somebody today.
Episode's done. We're done.
And,
It's
and they're
yes,
like,
the answer was yes.
hey, do you have time for a meeting today? And I'm like, sure. And they're like, well, can you meet at this time? I'm like, no, I've got a meeting at this time. And they're like, well, can you meet at that time? No, I got a meeting
I
at that
can't
time.
find an
They're
opening.
like, wait. They're like, well, can you meet at 4? I'm like, sure, why not? And so I had jumped on a call, for the Saudi project. And of course that was early and pretty much have been nonstop since 6 a.m. on meetings all the way through this one at 5. And, other than the few bathroom breaks and coffee breaks, I was just nonstop. And
Ass in seat. Yep.
because, people, so what was funny is like one person said, oh, well, I'll make, the meeting at this time so that you'll have a break. And then somebody else was listening, oh, look, he has some time in his,
There's some
in his
opening.
schedule.
Yeah.
Let
You
me
have to
jump
book
in
your
there.
own break time in your calendar as
you do
I'm
that,
busy.
which is, yeah.
I used to. I don't need to do that anymore.
Well, you didn't. Well, okay. So where that came from is, again, these books and documentaries that I've been, listening to, reading, and watching.
that romanticize architecture.
That
and the
romanticize architecture.
Yeah.
And they were talking about like the quality of like the architecture and I talked about listening to Paul Goldberger's his book on architecture, which I literally have blanked on it because I told you earlier today that my mind is so fried that I don't even know why architecture matters. And they were talking about the just the way that back then these architects did romanticize about like everything, the line, and all of these other things. And
you sent me some
literally
quotes. You sent me some quotes.
Yeah.
Actually, about that. I think you have a Saarinen quote here. It says,
Yeah.
You have to remember that architecture is not just here to give space and shelter, but to architecture also has the purpose to elevate and enhance man's time on earth.
Right.
Speaking of romanticizing.
And so all of those were kind of like, all of those were sort of like, lumped together in this whole kind of like stream of thought of, are we, and you drive around and you see what is being produced and what's being built and all of this other stuff. And we do know that not everything is being, designed and built by architects, that there's a very small percentage of work that's being done by architects. But then
there's a difference between architecture and buildings, right? And there, just because there's an architect involved doesn't mean it's capital A architecture.
And that was sort of where I was going, is like, even the buildings that are being done by architects, are they buildings or are they architecture?
Well, the funny thing, if you just kind of think about that from a real surface level, it's like we're talking about the commoditization of so many things, right?
Yeah.
And like every architect's got the same set of tools that every other architect does, right? And everybody's competing kind of at the same like level of thought when we're going after work. It's like the same meetings are happening in the same offices everywhere. Like this, we'll differentiate ourselves in this really subtle, nuanced way. And it's like, okay, everybody's thinking that, right? It's kind of sad too, right?
Well, the documentary that I was watching on Saarinen, that prompted that me sending you that text. He was talking about how architects have a responsibility to elevate and create more than just your average building, that we should strive for these amazing spaces. And then the box checking comment comes from just the fact that you drive around and you look at things that are designed by architects that are just, okay, well, this meets code. Okay, this is the developer will be able to afford to build this or whatever. And there's so many things that kind of get in the way to like dumb down what are, I guess the spiritual side of the task that we all sort of got into architecture for. We didn't get into architecture to just build code minimum buildings. I mean, our conversation, with William, it was all about this, what can AI do to kind of like take over the mundane task? Well, if we're creating mundane buildings, guess what? It's going to take over the entire task in a way.
Yeah, and architecture is basically, I would say, like, your role in your firm is driven by the expectations of others way more than it's right. And so therefore, I mean, this is like project management 101 is like, I'm too busy. I'm busy. And what does busy mean?
Yeah.
I'm living in Outlook all day long, every day. My phone's going off, right? Yeah. I'm checking boxes. I mean, you literally, and because everything's deadline driven and your client wants stuff and the AHJ wants stuff and the QA person wants stuff and the spec writer needs stuff and those things have to get printed and all of this, it's like you literally are just like trying to hang on. And what you're talking about, like, the romantic version of what you're hearing and reading and all of those things was like a very small firm where one person was taking bets, right? Like seriously trying to do things that no one had seen before, no one had done before. Because, I mean, call it privilege, call it a luxurious position, whatever. Like, they built that on purpose. Right, like they built it on purpose, and they built it on tons of other people's backs, right? Who were signing up to understudy with them for very little, right? Recognition, anything, right? But then also in hopes of doing it themselves one day, right? And like they built that practice to do that thing, and that is a very different thing than the kinds of medium and large size firms, for the most part, that are doing today.
There was just going to keep rolling with the whole nerddom thing, but there is another documentary that I was watching called Tiger City about Louis Khan's Bangladesh parliament building. Mm-hmm. It was interesting because of the people that were being interviewed were people that worked with or worked for or had experienced just the kind of like the genius behind Louis Khan. And there's like Stephen Hall was being interviewed and he was talking about, I wanted to go work for him because, of the way that his process and his model building and just the way that he sketched and the way that he thought through everything. And unfortunately, he passed away before Steve could even go work for him. But, that was his plans, is that he was going to do that. And it was just this. And so then I'm watching the one on Saarinen, and then just this amazing group of Pritzker Prize winning, AIA Gold Award winning FAIA architects are all like these disciples of his that are still pushing the envelope of amazing work, or actually have all probably retired and possibly passed in their own right. But I mean, it was just these amazing group of architects that worked with him that you kind of wonder, is like, where is the next run of Saarinens that are creating the next level of amazing architects that are working for them, or the Louis Kahns that are creating? I mean, I think
we've seen them. We've seen a lot of them at the Monterey Design Conference, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and at the same time, like they're still guilty of doing the same thing, of building a practice on the backs of like labor, right? who are really doing the grunt work. Like, but what's interesting is like that conversation you referenced with William Dodge that we had. It's like this idea of like maybe there's actually a way out of this with the tools that take the mundane off my plate.
yeah.
Like, let's just say it that way, right? And that's going to take a while still, but I could actually potentially see that happening.
I think I remember this conversation that I had with you about, like, if you were to start a practice from scratch, how would you go about it today?
Yeah. Today.
How would you
versus
go about
3 years ago or 5 years ago,
Right.
right? Like it's pretty wildly different than what it was just that short time ago.
You know, it's funny. I've been thinking about, because I've been reading and listening and watching all of these different things about all these master architects from back in the day. And I've been thinking, this is like, oh, you know what I would really love to do is start my own practice again and have it be kind of the architectural workshop. But then I started thinking, how would I go about doing that? Because remembering the conversation that you and I had with you thinking about how you would start a practice today with today's tools. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I don't want any of today's tools.
I mean, that's legit.
I want the trace paper. I want the wooden models. I want
But you don't want to do the mundane. And I think, this idea of it being a cult of busyness is real in firms. Yeah. And if you do a small firm, like, you literally have to do all that yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Or you have to start building a team, assembling a team to do that stuff. And then you need to find people who really want to do that stuff and are good at it.
I feel like I was sharper and more on my game when I worked for a smaller firm that I had to do everything, because I had my kind of like fingers in everything, design.
You were younger.
Manager.
You were just...
I was younger and I could... Sure.
You were sharper.
Ouch. Man,
it's true.
I'm old and tired. I believe there is a space for you behind the woodshed.
But I know what you mean, but you literally were younger, and your brain was and there, like, it was more, you could deal with that way better than you could now.
Well, but what's funny though is, like, so again, all of these things that I've been doing more recently, just like reading, watching, absorbing history and stuff,
feeling
are
sorry
the things,
for yourself.
No. Are the things that I wish that I would have done back when I was younger, to have an even like broader sense. Now I'm like, man, why didn't I do this?
And why didn't you?
Because
let's go back to the thesis here, because you've been checking boxes. Like, you've been so busy. Yeah. You've literally been buried by architecture. Yeah. By these projects, by the busyness, by like this. I mean, and what's crazy is people say I'm busy, like they're and like, what happens at review time? I did all these things, and it was like, but is that effective? Is that the true value? Is that the best purpose and service in the pursuit of what we stand for? I doubt it. And yet people get rewarded for that. Mm-hmm. And so then, guess what? Effective? More, right?
Yeah.
The reward for getting a lot of work done is more work.
Yeah. As we always say, it's like, the reward for hard work is more hard work.
Yes.
And I know you just said that, but it's just like, I literally just said that to somebody the other day. I told them that, hey, I know that you've been working really, really hard, but I've got more work for you.
Yeah, right. Because they're damn good at it, and you can count on them and all of those things.
Exactly. And in my position, I feel horrible that I'm asking somebody to basically do more work because they've done so much work previously.
Yeah.
Because you
totally get it.
Because I lived that. I lived that whole thing. I did want to ask you.
Have you seen those things where it's like you go to the coffee bar and it's like if you stand at the counter, if you order, it costs this much. If you stand here and watch, it costs more. No. Yeah. Right? Yeah. If you ask me for something, it costs even more. There's like different versions of that out there. But like, I think what all this comes back to is kind of this idea of trust, number one, and like the real specifically, like what you're good at doing and how you do it is kind of like your business. And that's where that trust is built. It's like that you can do what you say you're going to do. And then there's this other thing of expectations and urgency and priorities and other people's versions of that being pushed onto you. My urgency is your priority. And like that's what email is, right? It's just an inbox of to-do items for things for you that you didn't sign up for, right? Like it's just like a trash bin that's enormous, and people are just throwing stuff in, and you have to deal with sorting it out and prioritizing it and doing all these things. It's just like a free for all.
Yeah.
That's the life we all live.
Yeah. I want to change topics a little bit, even though it's kind of building off of what.
No, it's okay. I don't think we're really getting anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to preface this by could quote at least two people, but one person has said it a couple of times. But so sitting in studio with these students, and I always ask them, have you heard of this architect, or have you heard of this building? And the quote was, Cormac, don't you know that if you ask us what this architect, who this architect was, or, what this building was, that we're not going to know?
The answer is no. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I was talking to him yesterday and had said, I've been watching these architectural documentaries, and they're like, of course you have. And then I had asked them yesterday, do you know who Eero Saarinen is? And there was somebody sitting behind me who had, said out loud, Cormac, we don't know who that is. And of course, like, it was sort of painful that one of my top 5 architects.
What year are these students?
I'm not going to divulge.
Maybe they're not students. I don't even know.
Well, but so
these
here,
are professionals.
So here, it well could be too, because I've had conversations with people who I work side by side with that have. So here's my question to you, because clearly I've been having this question to myself quite a bit, and feeling that there is a lot of importance to it. What do you feel like is the importance of learning architectural history, architects, and building history as an architect? What is the value of that?
So there definitely is a value. I mean, it would be. I guess I was going to say it would be
sorry to
difficult
put you on
to
the
just
spot.
pull that out and but at the same time, it's kind of fundamental to how you become an architect, is to study other architects and those projects, and not only like go through the drawings, but visit those places, right? Because you get to experience that firsthand, right? And so like this level of like, there's something to be said about access to all information at any moment, and at the same time, it's totally a crutch, right? Because it's like, I'm busy. I don't have the time to go do that. It's cool that I can just pull it up at a moment's notice. And yet you never get like over the threshold of being able to have these conversations, and why they're important, and what are these examples, and did you sense the scale of that place when you went into it? Because because I looked at it on a screen. I looked at it on a tiny screen, right? And
exactly.
And so I really don't have a feel for it. And what's so interesting to me is like the older that I've gotten and being an architect, it's like, wow, it matters so much. It matters so much. You have to do that stuff to be the communicator, the idea generator, the inclusive, like, let's sit around the table and talk about ideas, like to be able to transform an idea into reality. You have to have lived. I believe you have to have lived. You have to have practiced. You have to have cooked your own food. You have to have gone to the bathroom in an outhouse to a like the most palatial bathroom you've ever, like you have all the versions of that thing. You have to have bought your own pots and stored them in cabinets to understand how much space is needed for these kinds of things. You have to know that like this door on this room is installed 180 degrees the wrong way for various reasons, because like I know what works, and I
Right.
know this
Right.
doesn't. Right? It's like
Yeah.
this is the weirdest way I could answer your question, right? Because
No,
it's
it's
not
exactly
academic.
right.
It's
Yeah.
not academic. It's like here are the realities of why you should study this stuff, but really experience this stuff.
Experiencing spaces and places. I mean, if you're the shaper, creator, emoter of these places and spaces, you have to understand them. I mean, having like this understanding of how other people use them, or at least the curiosity to ask and experience how and observe how other people are using things. I mean, to really understand how, in fact, I mean, I've always had somewhat of a little bit of a distaste for the architect to architect conversation that's simply about design without including like the users that are going to be experiencing, living and breathing those spaces for however long they work there or live there or whatever. And just trust me, I love waxing poetic about architecture. 100%, obviously. But I also like to just have a simple conversation about, hey, Evan, how would you use this space? And then learning
What do
from
you
other
do?
people.
What do you do today? What do you do tomorrow?
Right.
That's it's not just how do you use it. It's so many. There's so many levels to that. That's the first question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just like, hey, we're going to design a classroom. Are you just going to pop in, oh, here's how I think I would use a classroom? Well, are you the teacher? Are you the one who's going to be there on a daily basis? Are you the student who's going to be using this? How isn't it better to have that conversation with the people who experience it on a daily basis? Or to your point, okay, if you're going to go design a classroom, then go experience other classrooms. Watch what people do in them, how they engage them. I was trying to explain to my A students that almost every memory that people have is usually wrapped around a space or a place, right? There, an emotion, oh, this was the last time I saw this person. And it could be like in a place where they last saw that person, or, oh, I remember when I was in class here or something like that. It's always this physical embodiment of memory. And we get to do that. We get to create that. We get to be a part of everybody's memory without knowing that we're a part of their memory. And so to me, that's like our task is like, okay, if you just think that on a grander scale, that you're shaping other people's memories, how then would you create that space?
How do you keep that top of mind when you're doing it? When you're
Yeah.
when you're firing back an email at a contractor?
When you're checking the boxes,
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
on
you
page
talk about
12.
kind of an overall sense of purpose and intention. I mean, I can imagine you might write it on a sticky note, put it right on your monitor after I saw the photo you posted after we recorded last week.
Yeah, I do that.
All of
a lot.
your monitors are covered in sticky notes. But that is something that you would have to keep reminding yourself. You almost need it's like those glucose monitors that I just need this constant measurement.
Yeah.
Oh, did you forget? Oh, here's a reminder. This is why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But there's such a pull to the other, the 99% of all the other crap that you have to do to deal with, that it's hard to remember that.
Remember the I'm the one who, for however long, and it's out of view and out of reach, so I can't pull it off the wall, but has a little orange sticky note, because I had a whole bunch of orange sticky notes, remember, from my year-long daily sketches, that has a question mark on it. That's all it has on it. I've always had a question mark on my desk somewhere. And the whole intent of that is to question everything. Just question everything. And so people would come up with what's the question mark for? Exactly.
You're getting it. You're getting
Yeah.
it.
You know, but it's just like, it, yeah, I don't know. I guess I need to stop reading some of these. They're like romance novels to me.
They are. They're
They're totally like, oh, Lou, you get me. I wish other people did.
Well, it sounds like you have some recommendations for the audience. Let's finish up here. We'll definitely put the titles to these things into the show notes for those who want to partake. But can you remember off the top of your head what the names of these things are?
So I will say books that I'm either listening to or reading.
Mm.
You Say to the Brick. Need you guess what
That's the title. You
Yes.
Say to the Brick. Okay.
Gropius. No, I had to. Yes, I know. And for if possibly a professor is listening to this, yes, I know I was supposed to read it. Yes, I did write a report about it and will admit to it that I did not read it. The Death and Life of Great American Cities.
How many years ago are we talking right now?
A long time ago.
Okay. The statute of limitations has passed.
Yeah. Obviously, modern man.
Okay. Wait, say the name of the previous one that you didn't write the
Oh.
report for, or that you did write the report for.
The Death and Life of Great American Cities, Jane Jacobs.
Okay.
Okay. So I have read as kind of more of like reference guides these two books, yet I think reading them in book form is better than listening to them. Oh my Lord, just don't listen to them.
There's some books that just don't work. Yeah.
A pattern
As
language
audiobooks. Okay. Yeah. That's
is
definitely
not an audiobook. Sorry.
Have you tried to listen to that?
Yes.
Is that a thing?
It is.
That doesn't seem like it's like trying to
It's a
listen to
thing.
graphic standards.
Yes.
Nope.
A Timeless Way of Building. Another one of
Okay.
of his that of
Alexander's,
Christopher
yeah.
Alexander's work that
Okay.
is not an audiobook. I thought, ooh, cool, audiobook. No, not an audiobook.
An illustrated guide to building construction. Yeah, I'm gonna listen to that on the way.
It's funny is that I have a building code illustrated sitting on my desk right here.
There you go. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that being a
Let's turn this
an
into a
audiobook.
podcast. Yeah.
Yes. Broken Glass about the Farnsworth house.
Okay.
Honestly, this is a really good read because I do have the book, but this is also a very good listen, and that is Why Architecture Matters. And I've got something in my eye for those that are watching this because
I think I have that. I don't. I would have to kind of go through the library.
Paul Goldberger, and honestly, it's good. It's good. I appreciate it because I definitely recommend it. And then of course like the biographies like Frank Lloyd Wright and Modern Man about Corb. We've already talked about like all of these. And so the whatchamacallums that I've been watching, the whatchamacallums, I believe whatchamacallum is this You Will Love alto. Just
That's what it's called. Alto.
yeah, it's just alto.
Not to be confused with the video game Alto's Adventure.
This was the PBS special American Masters about Eero Saarinen, and then Tiger City, which is on Louis Kahn, were the three that I just recently watched and are watching. Nice. I'm in the middle of alto, and I would love someday, just because I'm that kind of a weird person, to like put this diagram up on the wall that has like pictures of all of these different architects and like just put strings that
you're talking about your
yes, I'm still talking about it.
No, you're basically describing like this is going to be on a wall in a cabin in the backwoods somewhere because
I told you when I have the architectural workshop, the architectural workshop is just me doing hands-on things, and one of them is going to be
with your wall of
this
connections between all these
wall
architects.
of connections between all of these different architects.
With pins and yarn and photos.
What was funny is,
sketches. There'll be sketches.
Here we are talking to William Dodge, and he's talking about his connection to Albert Kahn. And here I am living in Detroit, where Albert Kahn lived and practiced and learned architecture and everything else. And you see the connection of other architects that, we may want to say Albert Kahn for the Detroit area is like the beginning, but he wasn't even the beginning. He had apprenticed with some amazing architects that we just don't even know who they are, but some amazing architects that then he learned his craft. And then you see like the lineage of all of the different people who used to work under Kahn and those lineages. And then other people kind of like adjacent to him that went in other directions that like started the Smith Group and all of these other ones, and how there's this just amoeba, this nebulous of like all the different architects.
It's organic. Yeah.
It is. And I'm pretty positive that you're probably working for somebody, or you've worked with somebody who's worked with somebody who's worked with probably one of your favorites. I remember one of my professors was a project manager for Mies. And here I am learning architecture from somebody. So I'm 2 degrees separated from Mies, and it's kind of cool when you think about stuff like that.
Maybe you're the Kevin Bacon of this algorithm right here, this formula. 6 degrees of Cormac Phalen.
Maple bacon, maybe.
That's great. I've got the episode title. Yes.
Maple bacon of architecture.
Maybe the maple bacon. Yeah. Somebody say bacon?
Yeah. Damn it. Now I'm hungry. I was kind of hoping it was Cormac and his purple marker.
Purple pen?
Yeah.
Purple felt tip. Bringing it back. Bringing it back to the beginning. Good job.
Learn your history, folks. Learn your history. It's fun. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not fun, but it's fun.
It's fun for you.
It's fun. Speaking of just history, weirdness, I don't know why. I woke up this morning and I had a song in my head that I don't believe that I have heard in my head since I was a kid. And I don't know if you remember those little, cartoon PSAs that they used to put on.
Well, some of them, I'm sure.
So, hanker for a hunk of cheese. Do you remember that?
I've heard that terminology. I'd have to hear it.
It was from a PBS, so we should put it in the link or in the show notes just because,
just for fun, a little Easter egg.
Just for fun. And right, if somebody's like listened
funsies.
to the end of this, then yeah. Come on, I'm waiting for a commercial to run through so that then the video will play. Maybe, no. Going to press it again.
Hold it up to your mic. I want to hear it.
You ever get that hungry feeling after school? Oh, I do. I'm so hungry, I could eat a wagon wheel. When I'm so on the draw and I need something to chaw off, I make her buy a good cheese for when my 10-gallon hatch a feeling 5-gallon wine. I got something planned, which is Toledo cheese sandwiches. Come on. Here's a great one.
I'm going to just stop it there, but
that's great.
I literally woke up saying, hanker for a hunk of cheese. What the hell was going through my head in the middle of the night for me to wake up to think about some PSA cartoon from the 70s?
Nice. This has been a nostalgic conversation.
It
has
has.
it not?
It has.
All right. Until next time.